Perfect. So thank you to everyone who has taken time out of your afternoon to join us for this webinar. Hopefully, or the reason you guys are here is because this topic piqued your interest, pros and cons of VDI versus DaaS, desktop as a service, right? So I want to do a quick introduction of myself and CleanSlate. My name is Brandon Bogrel. I am the director of our IBM software practice at CleanSlate. We are a platinum IBM business partner and have been in business since 2000. We're located in the Midwest and the Indianapolis area. So we've been in business for about 22 years. We work very closely with IBM, obviously, and Dizzion, who is going to be presenting today around the pros and cons of VDI versus desktop as a service. So just to reiterate some of the things that we've recently done with IBM and Dizzion is we've worked very closely with them to help navigate all of the organizations within the retail and college institutions to convert some virtual desktops to IBM Cloud. Same thing in the finance and insurance spaces. So we're happy to help you guys with any of your IBM Cloud and desktop as a service needs, if and when that becomes a priority for you guys. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Linda Harper from Dizzion.
Thank you so much, and really do appreciate that. And thank you all for attending. And hopefully I can share some insights what Dizzion and CleanSlate and Ingram and IBM have been seeing around the desktop and kind of some of the advantages and disadvantages of on-premise virtual desktops and also then of desktop as a service. And so that you can really see both of them and kind of get an overview of them, kind of understand what the differences are, give you a little success story. And I do like the fact that Brandon just mentioned a couple of great ones that we had closed, which I thought we would mention. So I actually picked a different one to talk about towards the end. And then obviously kind of just some of the best practices, timelines, how to implement DaaS. Again, please use the chat section if you have any questions during it. Just use the chat session. And Brandon, I would ask if you wouldn't mind keeping an eye on that and just interrupting me, letting me, we can answer it. Let's make this a little bit interactive so as that we can get people's questions answered as well and make sure if I need to clarify anything, we can do that
of course
at the right time. That would be great. Thank you so much. And I'm Linda Harper. I suppose I better introduce myself. I'm the Senior Alliance Manager here at Dizzion, and I manage the IBM and the VMware relationships here. And it has been really exciting getting to work with CleanSlate and getting to work with their distributor and IBM Cloud and being able to deliver cloud desktops from anywhere. Being able to be agile. Obviously, the last couple of years have been a little different for everybody. So it's been super exciting. I've been nearly 3 years at Dizzion. So I started right when the world went into shutdown. So it's been a great journey and it really had a lot of fun and getting the IBM Cloud relationship up and running and working with all the great business partners there. So thank you so much, CleanSlate, for organizing this. And again, like I said, please ask any questions in the chat. Happy to answer them for you. And if I can't answer them, I'll definitely get you the answers. So just a little bit about what the Dizzion offering is today. So it is basically Dizzion desktops on IBM Cloud utilizing VMware Horizon. So the exact same Horizon Enterprise that everybody is used to using on-prem. So that really, for us, what was key was being able to deliver an enterprise digital workspace as a service. So completely, when you buy a desktop, you get the VMware Horizon, you get the IBM Cloud, you get all of the Dizzion services, all included in that one bundle. So that has been huge for a lot of our customers, really helps them know exactly what they're getting. And more importantly, being able to use VMware Horizon, which is one of the industry leading desktop virtualization platform. It's the most used virtualization platform by Fortune 500 companies. Then you you put that on IBM Cloud, and hey, we have the #1 rated public VMware cloud. You also are looking at the enterprise cloud. More importantly, for a lot of people, is the fact that we can do it across over 40 different IBM locations, whether they're multiple locations in the US, Latin America, globally. If you start to use third-party providers in other regions, hey, being able to put a desktop closer to them obviously gives the user a better experience. So that has been huge, being able to partner with IBM. And then more importantly, it gives us the chance then to work with all of IBM's business partners, which has been huge for us. And then of course you get the Dizzion solution, obviously on top of all of that. So basically giving you that #1 performing DaaS desktop, as well as being able to provide our proprietary analytics. So analytics and orchestration, so really making it as a service, making it a complete solution. So now a little bit as to why we're here. Traditional virtual desktops, some great benefits. And my history is I actually came from VMware. So I actually sold many traditional VDI and desktops. So where people were doing it on-prem. One of the key points for a lot of clients were they want to be able to control it. They wanted to own it. They wanted it to be their solution. They wanted to be able to really customize it to make it exactly how they wanted it. And so that's all great. When you're doing it on-prem, you really do have the ability to manage it from top to bottom. So from a hardware perspective, from a software, from all the different networking, it's in your data center under your control. Your security teams can be, very clear on how the patching's done, how the compliance is done, what monitoring is being done on that. So you really have a lot of control on that. One of the downsides of that is obviously when you're controlling all of that, you're less agile. I mean, we've definitely seen over the last couple of years, just supply chain, just challenges getting additional servers in quickly. If you need graphic enabled, so if you're trying to get GPU cards, anything for your VDI, it has become more challenging. There's definitely, you're not keeping spare hardware typically on site just in case you have to grow it, but you do an acquisition and all of a sudden you need to quickly grow that environment. How do you do that? And so that can be some of the downside from a traditional VDI. Another positive, it's you own it. It is your responsibility. You're accountable for it, but you know exactly what software is in there, what point solutions you've put in there, how you're monitoring it. So again, it's all back to that management, really knowing exactly what it is and what you're doing. On the downside, oftentimes, when you're looking at starting an on-prem virtual desktop environment, and building that from scratch, you have to, get all of the hardware in. If you don't have existing hardware, which most people don't, they're using their existing hardware, they don't just have spares laying around. So most of the time you're having to get in all that hardware. It definitely adds to, that upfront cost in there. Also then have to consider some of the soft costs around hiring VDI engineers, making sure, you're buying the additional software to do more of the monitoring of it, retraining your end users, multiple different pieces, and across multiple different departments. Usually we see being involved in a on-prem VDI deployments. And one thing I should mention there too is, oftentimes it can be expensive, obviously, to change it. If you've set it up one way and then all of a sudden you decide you need something else, that can be expensive. But more importantly, then the ongoing management of it, we see more and more today where VDI engineers and virtual desktop engineers are in high demand. And, we definitely have met some clients who, have lost their VDI engineer, are struggling to hire another, and so have started to look at desktop as a service as an alternative because it comes with the expertise. So again, just a couple of things to consider. So again, it comes down to choice, but it's your choice of everything. So it really means you can choose the brands you want. So from an antivirus, from a how am I going to do patching? What monitoring tools am I going to do? What server am I going to use? What size? What, if you're doing graphics, what GPU cards am I going to use? Everything is all completely built to your spec. So it is very bespoke, definitely a very customized build, exactly how you want it. From a downside, as more and more people are doing hybrid works, things like that, there is definitely the potential for some latency issues with highly dispersed end users. We're seeing more and more where people are hiring where the talent is, not necessarily where their offices are anymore. So that really, you really need to think about, how is my VDI performance going to be? It is strong when they're in the office. It's strong when they're in close proximity to the data center. But then as I start maybe working with third parties or hiring, offshore for some like contact centers or just nearshore, what is that lag going to be, and how is that performance going to be for those end users? Again, a big consideration. So before I move into the cloud desktops top piece, Brandon, any questions or anything for me before I jump into the cloud?
Nothing yet. Let's just keep rolling.
Sweet. And if I start going too fast, or Brandon, if you want to interject with anything, please feel free. So now we switch to the cloud desktops, and obviously I'm going to get all smiley and happy talking about this. It's my bread and butter. But, really from a desktop as a service perspective, some of the key things that we see as being benefits for a lot of clients is minimal upfront costs, kind of that pay as you go financial efficiencies that they're getting from that. And so really what we're talking about is, there's typically some kind of non-recurring setup fee, but again, if you compare that to buying a whole new hardware, servers, networking, all your different switches, everything that's involved in building the desktop infrastructure, it's going to be very different from that. And then two, you can also scale it. You can start out a little smaller and grow into it. Typically, when you're looking at doing it on-prem, you usually, start a little bigger than you probably would want to, but it is, you have to do a minimum of this many servers to have your N+1. You have to have it built for resiliency. So you have to build a bigger environment than you may need. Nice thing with the desktop as a service is that's kind of all built in there. Desktop as a service providers are experts in this, and so they can really help you reduce some of those upfront costs, and then also kind of help really do that monthly billing for you going forward. One of the downsides, real desktop compliance versus desktop compliance support. So that is definitely something, a lot of people, it's a huge consideration when people are looking from losing some of the control and moving to that desktop as a service. A lot of DaaS providers say, oh, we're PCI, we're HIPAA, we have all this compliance, but oftentimes they use compliance support. So they support you, but may not cover all of that. So you want to just check, hey, when you're saying compliance, when you're looking at DaaS providers, it's really going, hey, what is that RACI? What are you covering for me? What are you taking off my hands versus what not? What is the security like? And those are questions we always tell our clients, no matter who they're looking at from a desktop as a service. It's like, hey, when you're looking at compliance, happy to provide you with a RACI. Let's walk through what exactly we're covering. And so that can definitely be some of the downside, and definitely needs to be considered when looking at a desktop as a service solution. You really need to deep dive on what is covered, what is not. Again, it's a gray line. Not sure why my slide does not want to go forward. Love technical difficulties. So again, where we talked is, scalability being hard on the on-prem VDI, traditional VDI side. When you're looking at desktop as a service, definitely more agile, nearly infinite. Its on-demand scalability is huge for a lot of people. Being able to account for seasonality, being able to quickly scale up if there's an acquisition, a merger, being elastic, being able to scale up for a shorter period of time because you have a short-term contract, and then being able to scale down. So all of these are kind of really a strong selling point for desktop as a service. You eliminate the slow hardware supply chain and setup. You basically go straight to being able to add desktops in there that are ready in minutes. And that is huge for a lot of companies, especially for certain divisions, even within companies. It's where, they have turnovers, they have new projects coming up quickly where they get third party, or they have temporary workers coming in, things like that. That is huge, being able to scale quickly for the business, and really helps to drive the top line for the company, being able to get people up and running on desktops much quicker. One of the downsides, and we all saw it, when everybody, when cloud started, people started looking at clouds back for their server workloads, and developers, oh, quick swipe of a credit card, I can get I can get 4 servers, I can do some development here. And all of a sudden, you ended up with a larger bill than was being anticipated. And all of a sudden, the credit card shouldn't be covering it anymore, needed to go to a procurement perspective. I remember when 6 or 7 years ago, when cloud started being, there were partners popping up who basically their whole role was to help people understand their cloud bill and where the extra costs are coming on. So that really is something has to be considered when you're looking at a desktop as a service solution. The unexpected costs that can be buried in the fine print. Check what's included, check what's not. Great thing, IBM Cloud. The ingress and egress is being included. A lot of places that may not be the case. So really you have to check in and read that fine print to see what is being offered. Some offer fully managed services, some are offering desktops only, others are offering some of that, that bandwidth, others are not. So you really have to make sure what is being included in that. I've seen people where they do, hey, let's do them minute by minute, but then they forget to power off machines, and all of a sudden they're paying a higher rate to do minute by minute because they thought everything was going to get shut off at specific times, but then they realized people use their desktops a lot more than they had initially anticipated desktops being used, or they're on a meeting, but they're still running their desktop, even though they're technically, not actively on it. So again, multiple things to consider around what those unexpected costs could be. So always make sure you're reading that fine print, making sure what's included, what is not, and accounting for that when you're looking at a desktop as a service solution. Obviously having national global providers, they're able to get those desktops closer to your end user. So most importantly on that, it really means, a better user experience. People are, this work from anywhere, business as usual. That's our motto and has been since prior to the last couple of years. But more importantly, what we're really seeing is most companies are not going back to 100% back in an office. There's a lot of hybrid work now. People got used to working from at home, and now we really want to enable that. It doesn't matter where you work, you're getting that same one. And so that's the great thing with DaaS providers. Typically having national and global providers, they can get those desktops closer to your end users. They also, can make sure low latency on that. If you have users, like I said earlier, if you have users in other locations overseas, maybe, being able to put desktops closer to them is going to give that better end user experience. One of the downsides, some DaaS providers struggle with bring your own device scenarios. And BYOD is obviously with supply chain challenges and things like that. BYOD has become large. A lot of our legacy clients have been in the contact center business process outsourcer space. And so they're really doing contact center for other clients. And, they have people who come in to work in the contact center, maybe they're 6 months, then gone, and they were struggling with keeping devices for those people. I had one client I remember where they actually kept an extra 500 desktops on site because they'd lose someone, desktop wouldn't be returned, they'd have to ship out new ones, and all of a sudden that cost really got hard for them. And then with supply chain, with challenges that way, it was starting, they were slowing down the business, and that was never a good thing. And so now they only hire people BYOD. And so they really needed a DaaS solution that could support their bring your own device first policy that they had, and clear lines of, hey, what type of device do we have to bring along? So again, that's another thing to consider when looking at DaaS providers is, can they support BYOD? What devices can they support BYOD? And what are the capabilities around it? And that, especially when security, compliance, pieces like that come in, definitely a very good question to ask when you're looking at desktop as a service.
Speaking of questions, we actually had one come through the chat, Linda, real quick. The question says, what verticals do you see using Dizzion most often? Is it education, small, medium business? Are there specific types of companies that tend to leverage Dizzion, or is it across the board?
Great question. And if you'd asked me that same question, probably at the start of being in Dizzion, I probably would have given you a different answer than I would give today. When we started, it was a lot of contact center and use cases. It was a lot of developer use cases. Now we're seeing it really across the board. We're seeing more and more people wanting that, no matter where people are, that they're getting the same experience. So we're actually kind of, some of the key places where we see it and across verticals is financial, contact centers, business process outsourcers. We're seeing it around education, for labs, for online students has started to be really big. For more engineering workloads where they're struggling with supply chain, any company who really has started to, need assistance, wanting more of a managed service, and who've already outsourced a couple of things, those are the people who are now coming to us. And typically from a desktop perspective, just kind of from that use, kind of moving the industry into use case, typically we see it where it may not be all or nothing, but maybe somebody's on-prem environment is starting to reach capacity, and they have a new use case come in, and they're like, well, that use case is actually ideal for a DaaS solution. Let's put that use case out there. We can learn on it. We can see how it does. And then as their environments, we've seen with a lot of our clients, as though their on-prem has kind of gone end of life and things, or as they've got more comfortable with a desktop as a service solution, they will increase it and add in more and more use cases. But again, we're really seeing where, some of the differentiators from our perspective, from a Dizzion perspective with it, is really those people who want high-performing machines, want compliance. Compliance is a huge thing. A lot of organizations we work with, they have to do compliance, and they're struggling on their desktops, especially with hybrid work, with desktops not being all plugged into the wall, not on their network. It was getting a little more challenging from a compliance standpoint. So we're definitely seeing more and more compliant customers looking at a compliant DaaS solution as an alternative, and to help them kind of keep on top of compliance on those desktops. Does that answer the question?
I think you nailed it, Linda.
Perfect, because Sometimes you can start there, and my brain will go somewhere else, and all of a sudden I didn't answer the original question.
Right.
So
Well, honestly, it sounds like there is potentially a use case for a lot of different industries, right? And so, if there is anyone on the call today that would be interested in learning a little bit more about the Dizzion solution and how it might fit your use case that you may or may not have already developed, let us know.
yeah, and that is, I will reiterate that is definitely one. Let CleanSlate know. They bring us in. We can actually, kind of go through some of the challenges of facing what your ideal world is and help you kind of build a solution. Go, hey, here's how we would do it. You can take that back, but we would, kind of do an architectural workshop with you, kind of see, hey, what's going to meet your needs, and not only needs for today. That's the great thing with DaaS solutions is, because of that agility, because of the fact, that, we have access to, bigger environments and GPU environments, compliant environments, things like that. We can actually not only work for you for today, but kind of as your business grows, as acquisitions happen, as, compliance needs change, oh, you've just hit a certain size. Now I have to not only do a self audit, now I have to get a third party auditor in. Things like that. We can kind of help you. Hey, you can start here. Here's where you'll get to. We also spend a lot of our time, desktop as a service is always, security is always going to be involved when you're looking at a desktop as a service. And so we definitely work with CleanSlate, work with the client, bring our experts in, bring our compliance officers, share our RACI, obviously all under NDA, but being able to do all of that and really helping you not just pick a solution that will work today, but a solution that's actually going to grow with the organization as things change. That is huge about the desktop as a service compared to doing it on-prem. It is very hard when you're building an on-prem offering to be able to account for every scenario that could happen and where growth could be and where not. And, and those changes then can be costly when you have to add additional storage or try put graphics cards into your servers, or then you don't have enough NICs, you don't have enough this, you don't have enough that. And so it just gets more and more challenging. Any more questions there?
One new one. What are some of the biggest revelations customers tend to have when working with Dizzion? Are there any aha moments that clients sometimes have that make them really realize the value that Dizzion brings?
I love that question, and you may want to time me on this because I could go on too long. But no, really on that one, and some of the biggest aha moments, I'll give you an example. We had a client, and they had Dizzion desktops, and they were using them for third-party developers, and they had a significant amount, and they really had done the math on it before they hired the third-party developers. They're like, oh, what's our ROI going to be? What's our expenditure? What's our return on investment? How do we see? And it was pretty good numbers, so they were pretty excited. 3 months into the contract, they come and we're asking them, how's everything going? They're like, oh no, the desktops are working fine. It's like, we're just not getting our return on investment. And we asked, oh, really? And they're like, yeah, we don't know what's going on. We're like, well, have you run some of the reports to see how the desktops are being used, et cetera, et cetera? And they're like, no, we can run that report. And that's part of our proprietary C3, which is our insights and analytics. So we ran a report for them, and it was able to go back over the 3 months term. All of a sudden, they realized that their developers were logging in the morning, logging out at 5 p.m., and they never touched the desktop in between the 2 times. Let me just tell you, it was a little eye-opening for them. Also, that third party paid for the Dizzion desktops for quite a long time to come after that little incident, and those engine developers were no longer there, and they got new ones and started seeing a return on investment. But really, that insights and analytics has been huge for a lot of clients that we have, because it really drills down into what is the user experiencing, I'll openly put my hand up that I'm probably one of those annoying users that would be, if we were setting up cloud desktops for the first, I would be put in that bracket of annoying users that let's do UAT on them because they're the squeaky wheel. And if I can make her happy, I'll make everyone happy. I don't like a slow computer. Don't like, but I also may abuse my computer a little. And yeah, I'm scared to actually see how many PowerPoints I might have open right now. Obviously, I'm on Zoom. I probably have Teams open. I may have like 7 or 8 Excel spreadsheets. Probably have 30 or 40 windows of Chrome open. Again, I should know better. Then my machine starts getting slow and I'm like, okay, now before I call IT, I could do it. But nice thing is when you have our analytics, you can really see what the users do. You're going to get notified if they're maxing out on RAM, if they're maxing out in CPU. You're also going to be able to see what applications they're running. You can actually even drill down into that end user's network. So, their bandwidth connections. So another aha moment for one client was they literally had one user who every day at 3:30 basically called in saying her machine was awful. She hated it. And, we were troubleshooting with them. We're like, well, look at her historical. At 3:30 every single day, her bandwidth is going down, and all of a sudden latency is huge. There's something going on. So they asked the question, what's going on? Her kids all came home from school and she had 3, and between Fortnite, YouTube, and whatever else they were doing, all of a sudden her desktop went. It's like, kick your kids off. Now how is it? Oh, it works perfect. Okay, let's get you a second internet line and don't let your kids on it. But again, they were able to troubleshoot, whereas in the past, they would have been trying to figure out why that customer, and it wouldn't have mattered if you'd added extra RAM, added extra CPU, that wouldn't have solved the problem. But that's typically the first thing people do when they're, oh, what could be wrong with this machine? But because we give you those insights and analytics, really drills down. Did that answer it? Roundabout, lots of storytelling way.
I love the personal examples. Those are fantastic.
Yeah. And they really are. And that's to me is some of the real big benefits of desktop as a service, is kind of having that day 2 help. Because when you're doing it yourself on-prem, you have to manage the day 2. And whoever set it up is typically, they may leave, they're not the ones who's following on. And all of a sudden, VDI can tend to be treated more like traditional desktops again, and you can have a little bit of sprawl. You don't have as clean golden images. And that really is the benefit from desktop as a service, is really helping you with that day 2, making sure, hey, let's keep you down to a limited number of golden images. Let me show you how to do application masking. Let me show you how to do, use some of the tools that are available to really have it so as that it makes it way easier for the IT teams. And then also gives the cleanest desktop for that end user, so as that they always have a clean desktop, much less likely to have any performance issues. No, time check. I don't know.
2:37. So yeah. Let's move on. There's a couple more questions, but we'll answer them as we move on.
All right, perfect. Well, I do have a real life use case. I've given you a couple already. Here is another great one. And very large financial institution. And so when you were asking what kind of verticals, we're seeing it across a lot of different verticals. We have government, we have education, we have pretty much nearly every vertical, but financial has started becoming a really big one for us, especially in their contact center and back room employees who may be remote. We're also seeing more branches that are looking at desktop as a service. But for this customer, they really wanted to migrate contact, some of their challenges, migrating contact center virtual desktops for optimal experience. They wanted to ensure PCI compliance. I mean, when they had any remote cloud desktop use, they had to make sure PCI compliance was being met. They needed an agile, scalable platform, contact center agent platform, because again, there was turnover, et cetera. And so they needed to be able to scale. They also would get new contracts, do an acquisition, have to roll in additional agents very quickly. And so that was really key for them, and was a challenge from before. And then they also wanted a DaaS experience, but on the Horizon Enterprise platform. So again, kind of how we solve that, the solution that we basically came up with for them, ended up delivering 5,000 cloud desktops to them. All Dizzion's doing it on IBM cloud, obviously using the software-defined data center. They chose 65% Dizzion managed, so we're managing all of the desktop virtualization layers and down. And then really for them, kind of some of the key, when we asked them, hey, what were the benefits for you on this? And, what were the positives of this move? And it was, they were rapidly able to migrate to the new platform, even just getting through some of their security reviews. They commented that they had actually allocated 10 weeks to do security reviews, and we had them all completed in just under 4. So that was huge for them. We were basically able to, because of that, get phase 1 done quicker and validated, and then really worked on some of their more and how do I, basically we worked in UAT with some of their more difficult agents, we'll say. And so being able to prove them, getting them a desktop that they really liked, literally then we were able to, on scale, send it out to all the other agents. So they kind of had those noisy agents. Let's do them first. Let's really tune it the way they need it. So they're super happy. And then being able to do it across all of them then really rapidly was huge for them. And then obviously being able to do that PCI, gives them a PCI compliant DaaS, reduce some of the risks, audit lift, met all of their compliance teams' needs and security teams. And then phase 1, it drove 6 successive expansions within a 3 months of the initial deal close. So that again, it's kind of when people start using a desktop as a service and then get more comfortable with it, it usually does. Kind of, you think of other use cases or where you may not have thought, oh, this use case would never work in a as a service kind of model. You're like, okay, actually, maybe it would. So really, that was, that's a great use case for us. And kind of, again, not just the smaller financials, but also the larger ones are now looking at desktop as a service. And, Gartner has actually said, released this year, it was they're anticipating by 2024, 80% of virtual desktops are actually going to be delivered from the cloud. So whether it's a desktop as a service offering or people are doing build your own on a cloud environment, they are anticipating 80% of virtual desktops are now going to be on cloud are going to be in the cloud by 2024. That's a huge number. And for a lot of people, they don't want to do a lot of those transitions. They want somebody to come in and help them with that and help them with day 2, kind of the experts on it. And so that's where we are. We're here to help.
That's an amazing stat, Linda. That took me by surprise. I didn't know that. So a couple of questions to piggyback off of that. You kind of alluded to it a little bit with this slide, but what is a typical migration timeline for, let's say, 1,000 desktops?
Yeah. So again, obviously, I'll give you typical, but typically, depending, 6 to 8 weeks, we would typically be in full production with it being run. Obviously, that can delay if we've, 8 weeks of security reviews in the middle. It's going to change that. But typically, we see it 6 to 8 weeks. Then obviously, we've had some clients where they've needed it accelerated. There was a critical item. I remember one of mine, and basically, their managed service provider that they had been using got hit with some ransomware and basically went out of business, and they had 30 days till doors were locked and they couldn't access anything. So we had to speed up and kind of expedite that one just a little bit. But again, 6 to 8 weeks would be the typical time on that.
So I don't know if you can see these questions that are popping in, but you're segueing perfectly into
I can.
what are the pros and cons? You know, we were focusing on the pros and cons earlier from a security perspective when it comes to VDI versus a DaaS solution.
So again, it's always that one where you want to make sure you're asking the right questions of people, because honestly, you know, if you have the right DaaS provider, should be able to meet all of the security needs. But again, it really is that one. Is it full compliance? I know from a Dizzion perspective, we were the first desktop as a service provider to get PCI level 1 compliance, which has been huge for a lot of our customers because that was kind of something they needed, especially in that business process outsourced or contact center space. They couldn't even bid on jobs because they didn't have that. And so we introduced PCI level 1 compliance. So of the 844 different compliances, we actually go in there, and from a RACI perspective, we take about 68% off your hands. So that has been huge. That also helps us pass most security reviews. And so first thing I'd say is when you're looking at desktop as a service, always make sure you're involving your security team early. If they have any forms that need, you know, risk assessments that have to be filled out, get them filled out when you're in that early phase, because then it's quickly apparent who can do it and who can't do it for you. So you're not kind of going down one route and then wait until the last minute and security says no. So we always, when we're talking to clients, it's always that big question is, hey, who from your security needs to be involved? Do they have a risk assessment? What does that look like? Let's start handling that early in the conversation, because we don't want that to be a showstopper at the end. We can typically talk around it, but that has definitely been one of them. The other big one being, you know, data sovereignty. And, you know, if you have different locations and different geos, they may have to keep their data in data centers in their location, things like that. And so having the relationship with IBM has made that just so much easier for us, being able to deliver across different geos and setting up, you know, environments for this division here and setting up environments. And so we can still use the same golden image, but then just transfer it to the other data center, and everything stays there and doesn't leave that you know, that country. So that has been huge. Did I answer it? More I can answer?
I think so. Nail on the head.
Sweet. Any others, or was that them all?
Let's keep going.
Perfect. I don't have too much more. I just have a few more, but kind of just wanted to introduce a little bit about, you know, if you're interested in desktop as a service, kind of how Dizzion delivers those digital workspaces. And, you know, nice thing is you call CleanSlate. What really, you know, what is nice is it's pretty simple way. It's, you know, 6 easy choices. It's like, hey, what location do we want to do it in? Then it's like, hey, do we have compliance requirements? Do we need HIPAA? Do we need PCI? Do we need GDPR? Do we need SOC 2? FedRAMP is coming, so that's super exciting. And we're working on that now. And that will really be a game changer. We're also working with IBM around financial cloud services. So that will be another big one for us coming up in 2023. So you kind of look at that and go, hey, what compliance requirements do I need? Typically, we have the compliances now that will meet most state and like privacy acts, everything, because we do PCI and GDPR. Basically, with that compliance, it will cover nearly everything in any you know, state privacy act that they have to follow as well. Then you go to your workspace management. Who do you want to manage those desktops? Do you want to manage the workspaces? Do you want us to manage them? And So we always manage from the desktop virtualization layer down, but we have two solutions. So you can manage the desktops, everything, manage the golden images. We'll help you set them up, but manage all the golden images, manage everything, or we can manage that. So it's about 90% Dizzion managed. And what's great on that is we're doing the things you hate doing. And so we really, we're handling from the antivirus layer down. Other great thing with the managed piece is for a nominal amount more, we're including antivirus software in there. We're including data protection, so 1 week retention and kind of backups on that. So and the remote monitoring and management, obviously. So we're including that in there. So again, something to think about. It's like, hey, it's a lot of point solutions. Our solution, that management piece, all of those pieces are kind of built as a whole, not kind of tagged on after the fact. So they're not bolt-ons, they're all built in. So again, it's going to give you that higher performing desktop. But so you choose your management layer, and then you choose, hey, what size desktops do I want? What, if I'm doing app streaming, what size applications do I want? What do I need? Do I need, how many do I need? What OS am I wanting to use on them? Then you can do some add-ons. So from a performance perspective, do you need graphics? Do you need GPU? From a protection perspective, hey, do we have to do DR? Do we want to have active sites? Do we want to have active passive? What are we wanting to do there? And then obviously expansion. Hey, that desktop size, I need persistent ones for these developers. That I need to add more storage for that. Or, hey, I want to add profile management so as that I can have instant clones, but everybody thinks they have a normal desktop. But honestly, it's getting refreshed every time. Best way to do it. Makes for a very clean desktop. So, but again, we'll walk you through all those, but there's a lot of different add-ons you can do there depending on what the use case is. And then obviously from a terms and financial perspective, CleanSlate can help you. But I mean, being able to do it prepay monthly 1 or 3 years has definitely, is big for a lot of our customers, especially if they have some seasonality. Being able to do a portion monthly just for seasonality or for short-term contractors that come in has been huge. Don't want to sign up for a full-term contract.
I think you just answered this question or hit on it from a certain aspect, but do you offer both non-persistent and persistent desktops? And then what are the pros and cons of each?
We actually, we do offer both. So we would always recommend non-persistent, even typically with larger workloads and things. Non-persistent can work once we have proper profile management set up. And so once we have those user files, typically we would always recommend non-persistent. There is some use cases, hey, if a developer, they need to be able to put whatever they want on there, do their own, add all their own applications, do all of this. That may be a reason. We could still probably talk you into non-persistent, but that is sometimes the reason for doing that. But what we typically do is we use instant clones and we do the floating desktops with profile management. So the user, they don't realize they're getting a different desktop every time because still their picture of their cat or their 7 kids is on the back. It's just, but from an IT perspective, hey, they're non-persistent, so they're floating. So you could basically change your golden image, update it, and then next time they log in, they have the latest golden image. So they have the patched image, they have the latest applications in there. Say a new application comes out and the whole company needs to get it. Easy, put it on the golden image, and then next time they log in, it's going to be there for them. So again, we would always recommend floating desktops with persistency if needed. Did that answer the question?
I think so.
All right. And then obviously we're getting to the end, but the next slide is Q&A. I think we've answered a lot of those as we're going through it, and I know we still have some minutes, so feel free to ask me some more, but I am going to put up Brandon's information there, that if anybody needs anything, would like, you know, a quote, would like just to hear a little bit more about Dizzion on IBM, how CleanSlate, IBM, Dizzion work together, how we can help you, just let Brandon know.
Yeah, look at that picture. Isn't it amazing?
Lovely.
No, I appreciate it, Linda. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. Thanks to everyone who spent the afternoon with us with CleanSlate and Dizzion. You know, I think it's pretty obvious that businesses around the world, they're starting to realize the need to shift from physical desktops to a desktop as a service solution. It's a great way to increase flexibility, productivity, reduce IT complexity within the organization. We went through a lot of those today. So please think about this. Spend some time thinking about it internally. Let us know how we can play a role and how we can help you in your journey to migrate to a DaaS solution. Again, thanks one more time for your time this afternoon.
Perfect. And if anybody has any questions, we could stop recording now and then maybe do some Q&A, Brandon.
Sure.